Вечер добрый, дорогие друзья, на ТВ Экстра. Сегодня специальная программа с контактером Джерри Уиллсом из США. Мы, естественно, зададим все ваши вопросы, которые вы нам прислали, но, естественно, в рамках одной программы Джерри не удастся на них дать ответы, поэтому будем задавать выборочно и в случае вашего интереса продолжим это замечательное интервью. Итак, с нами на прямой связи Джерри Уиллс. Джерри, hello from Russia. How do you do?
Hello, Dennis. Doing great. I'm here orbiting the Earth, as you can see, right here behind me. It's a beautiful sight. I'll be passing over Russia again very soon.
Great. We will keep waiting when you will pass Russia. Until that, I will ask you. You were invited several times to visit Russia, but you didn't do it yet. What's happening? What's going on?
Well, the first time I was married to someone else, and I was in Berlin at a UFO conference, my first international conference. And it was quite an experience for me. I'd never been, to Europe before that. When I went to Berlin, I spoke to a great number of people from all over Europe. Europe, Russia, Asia. I don't know if Russia is considered Europe or not. I'm not up on the politics of all that. But there were a lot of people in the audience, maybe a few thousand. And I was approached by some doctors from Moscow at some medical center. I really don't remember what the name of it was. And if they told me, I probably couldn't have pronounced it. But this one gal, she was very beautiful, quite tall. And she was a surgeon, and she asked if I would come to Russia to teach the healing, some healing things to these doctors. I was there because I was talking about UFOs and extraterrestrials, my experiences, but it went into a lot of other things. One of the things is what I do the most, and that is basically the healing arts, where I used energy to heal people. So I was invited to Russia, but my wife at that time, she was jealous of this tall, beautiful woman, of course. And because I was invited to be in Russia for at least 3 or 4 months, and it was all expenses paid. It was basically a very generous offer. She wouldn't have any part of it. She wanted to leave and come back and get back, because I was running a somewhat successful business here in the United States. She wanted to get back to that. I was also invited to several other places, Italy for a TV show, somewhere in Germany to stay at a castle and teach classes and so forth. I could have stayed in that part of the world for probably a long while. But I didn't go to Russia, and I have always regretted not doing that. There were a couple of other occasions as well, as word traveled around the world about my healing abilities. One day, I received a call from a fellow with a very strong and deep Russian accent, and he wanted to know if I would please come to Russia, to Moscow, because there was someone important who was having a heart issue, and he wanted to know if I would be interested to come. They would pay me well, and that I could help this person. And did I think I could help him? And of course, like I tell everyone, I don't know if I can help anyone or not, but I'm certainly willing to try. And if I don't try, then for sure I can't, obviously. So I agreed to it. So he said he would call me back. Well, as it turns out, he did call me back, and he said that, well, the United States State Department wouldn't allow it. And the reason is because the person they wanted me to work with was Mikhail Gorbachev. And there was some issue with, them flying me to Russia to meet with him. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. Well, since that time, I've been in touch with quite a few people from Russia, different doctors, different researchers, people who are interested in UFOs and the paranormal. And they've asked if I would come to Russia. And in some cases, they even offered to take care of the airfare and lodging and pay me something for coming there. And at the times that I've been asked, which was a couple of times really, not that many times, where there was, like, we'll fly you here, I wasn't able to. Either I was on a trip, heading to South America to do research or something like that. And because of it, I just wasn't able to go. But I have really, ever since I went that first trip to Berlin, I've wanted to come back to Europe, and I've certainly wanted to come to Russia. There are some very strange things in Russia, a very rich and ancient history, far more ancient than what modern archaeology will acknowledge. And there are also direct connections between these ancient people and extraterrestrials, or at least what I think might be extraterrestrials. I don't have the names of these places memorized. It's probably like it is for a lot of people in Russia. When you hear the name of a place, you recognize it, but then later when you try to remember it, you're trying to remember a different language. And I don't remember these places, unfortunately. But there are some amazing places. I had a woman in Russia send me a complete volume of books. There's 5 or 6 different books, and they're quite thick. And they talk about an expedition going into one of these places where there's an ancient city inside the mountains, and it apparently is still functional, but there's no one there. And this, they believe, is something that was put in place by people from another world. So anyway, I'd love to come to Russia. There's so much to do there.
That will be great if you will come one day in Russia. And it's very interesting thing that you told right now, that in Russia has a connection with previously civilization, or a kind of part of it. Possibly you can tell something more about it.
Well, it's a complicated story. Because it isn't just Russia where these people were living. I think because Russia is so vast, and like China is vast, there are a lot of places that are still, not that easily traveled to. And there are still amazing discoveries to be made. But what we know so far is that there were other civilizations before ours. And these people were capable of going off of this world to other worlds. And they basically, so far as I can tell, they knew something was going to happen to this world and they left. But concurrent with that, running right parallel with it, I believe they also had contact with people from other worlds. And it seems reasonable to me, because if you're going to be traveling like that, why wouldn't you, if they exist? And I think these people from other worlds, they helped out at that time long ago. And I think that they're still coming back. And I know that there are different races of extraterrestrials. Some of them look just like you and I. We're not that much different from them at all. And it's because humans exist out in the cosmos. There are other races as well that don't look like us. But there are people out there. And I believe the reason why they're back here now and have been is because they really never left. They've been here all along. And you look into ancient history and you see a lot of detail that's basically spoken about as if it's myth or legend. Because after the great earth changes that occurred 12,000 or so years ago, a lot of people died and technology was lost. It put this world back into somewhat of a stone age. And those records, unless they were carved onto stone, those records are gone. If they were on paper or, some solid state device, they're just gone. So the only records we have are what were put into stone. I think these people knew that that was one medium that would persevere. And that's why we find a lot of places that have very strange building techniques that also have a lot of information carved into the stone, but in a lot of cases, we don't know how to read that. There's a place up in the Andes, it's called Cumbamayo. Kathy and I did some research up there. There's a cave where this language exists that no one can read. And it's not chiseled into the stone, it is extruded from the stone. And we find that in a lot of places. There are places in Russia where gigantic boulders are stacked together. They're so big, it defies imagination how it could have even been done. Very similar to the big stones at Sacsayhuaman in Peru, for example, or Baalbek in the Middle East. I mean, these are gigantic stones, impossible to be moved by anything we know today, and yet they exist. And this is in Russia as well. So we know that they existed, that we know they were here, they left a record. And I believe that not only were they extraterrestrials, but they were also people who were of this world that were highly advanced, that knew something that we don't know, or perhaps it is known now, but it isn't released to the people so the people can know. There's a lot of speculation about this. There has to be an explanation. And when modern archaeology is predicated on keeping a narrative that promotes a line of thought, then you find something outside that narrative and it's completely ignored.
Yeah, there are a lot of things which modern science ignore, and we know about this special creature which marked like natural one and etc. And we have a lot of dolmens in Russia which created with a lot of stones, with shaped construction, and it's unbelievable how the people can create stones like a plastic, like a plastic mass and etc. And the popular question to you, Jerry, is how your story has begun, what happened, the start point from which you started to understand that you are not like anyone else, that you are a channeler.
Well, it starts back a long time ago for me now. I really don't know at what point to bring this start from. So I guess I'll start at the beginning. There was a plan that was put into place a long time ago. And in this plan, the people from out there saw that the people of this world were not moving in a direction that would accommodate the people here to actually evolve emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually in a proper manner that would ensure that people would be free, they could have free thought, and that they could move in a direction that would stop wars and try to bring a unification together so the whole planet could have a sense of unity. Now we're going to go from that grand idea down to a microcosm, because what they implemented was really worldwide. There's evidence of that. But what they did several thousand years ago is they brought their own people here to live among the people on this world. And in doing so, they were taught from children how to be iconic with what they could offer to help guide the people of this world. You know, you have Buddha and Jesus and a lot of other people like this. I mean, if you go through history, there's like 13 or so versions of Jesus where they all have basically the same story. You know, for example, Buddha, his mother was Maya. Her abdomen became clear and they could see Buddha in her womb. Same thing, you know, with Mary. Both were immaculate conceptions. Go back even farther to a fellow, I think his name was Mithra, and he was an incredible healer, and he taught people very deep spiritual values. And this was 700-800 years before Jesus. So there are a lot of people out there that were doing something to try and promote that sort of experience. In Russia, you had someone similar. In India, of course, Buddha. In North America, you had, I forgot the names of them, but there were several scattered around North America, and there were several around South America, and the same thing in Asia. So this was a worldwide phenomenon. The idea was to try and help. But in the process of doing that, what they discovered is that when they would show up in their ships, and when these people would go out and do these amazing things, both ended up being godlike in appearance to the people who were uneducated and had no idea what was happening. This caused a lot of problems because everybody who is seeking power wants to be godlike. And so the negative aspect of this began to populate among the people as well. So that was a big mistake. Fast forward to when there's going to be another point where there's going to be problems on this world. We've developed nuclear weapons. We've tried to harness nuclear energy. It's very dangerous. And so they show up again, but this time they don't show up the way they did before because they're not wanting to appear godlike. So what they chose to do is they chose to seed this planet with their people and seed them with babies. And the reason would be that as a child grows, they have a right to be here. They are, for all appearances, children of this world who grow into adulthood, but these children would be guided. And there were, as before, many instances of this. And this process started in the early 20th century, and it continued on through to a little past the latter parts of the 20th century. And for these children, it was important that they not really know who they are, except in certain cases. And it was important that they not know who the other ones like themselves would be. And the reason is because if they started finding out about each other, They would see how crazy this world is, how how many problems there are, and how dangerous it really can be. And with their combined energies and their combined abilities, with their knowledge, they would just choose to abandon this world and go off by themselves someplace else and create an environment where they would be feeling a bit more safe and secure, and then further develop their abilities past that point. But it wouldn't be serving the greater need of the people of this planet. So they weren't allowed to know who the other ones would be, who they are. So, with that in mind, in 1953, I came to this world and was deposited in an abandoned old house in the middle of nowhere. For this to work, of course, there have to be some people who know, and there were. And I was retrieved by what was then called the U.S. Army Air Corps and taken to Fort Knox Hospital, where I later was assigned to a man and his wife who were incapable of having children. And that became my mother and my father. It is from that point forward that a lot of things were quite different for me, because there were people who knew, but they were sworn to secrecy. But there were people who knew, and there were a lot of things that happened in the course of my early years. Places that I was taken to, tests that were done, just people following my growth and what I was interested in and what I was doing. So fast forward now up to about 13 years old, actually 12 and a half. I'd already had several instances of contacts with a few different races during those early years. At 12 and a half, a gigantic UFO showed up where I was living, which was a remote farm in central Kentucky. It's a very remote place. And this craft, it was really gigantic. I can't tell you how big it was, maybe 1,000 feet long and a few hundred feet tall, very shiny, silvery, no seams. There were these 5 luminous discs or round lights, and they would pulse with a pastel color from one side, then go back the other direction. They were different colors as well. So I decided that I would just run out there towards it. So I jumped a fence and I was going to go. This was just as the sun was setting, so it wasn't completely dark. But there was a voice that came inside my head and told me, no, don't do that. Just stand and watch. We'll only be here for a moment. It was about a quarter of a mile away from me, and I could have easily run over where it was at. I ran all over the place. Within a few more minutes, it just slowly glided off to my left. The full moon was shining. It was glinting off of this. I could see the reflection of the moon in it at one point. And then it just went on down over, because I was on top of a hill and a lot of trees, and it went past the trees and just right on down the hill. From that point forward, it would be another 6 months when I would be down in the woods. And there was an occasion where I got turned around, which was very unusual for me. I knew the woods quite well. the area where I lived. I never got lost. But in this case, I was somewhat confused. So I sat down waiting for a friend of mine who was supposed to meet me at a particular place. His name was Randy. Presently, as I'm sitting there, I hear the sound of footsteps through, the some foliage and leaves that are on the floor of the forest. And I thought this was my friend, so I just sat there ignoring him because he was over an hour late. I was a little uncomfortable. It was very hot, by the way. I had on a t-shirt with no arms and cutoffs and shoes. So I just thought he took too long. I wasn't happy about it. Well, as the steps grew closer to me, I did look up, and here comes a man. And this man is dressed in a very unusual style of clothing. It was close to the neck. It went down to the arms, connecting, like right in here. Just a one-piece suit. Now, we would say this person was wearing a one-piece lycra gym suit or something, because it's very form-fitting. The pants went right down and became boots. There was no seam where there was boots and pants. It was all just the same material. I was surprised, and I looked up and I said, "Hi, how you doing? Who are you?" And he told me his name was Zoe. It's Z-O. His name was Zoe, and that he wanted to talk to me. Would that be all right? And I said, of course. So we talked for only a few minutes, and the disorientation that I had before, where I wasn't sure where I was at, it became even stronger. But when it did, the conversation switched from being something you would hear with your ears to something you would hear in your mind. And I was conversing with him this way, and it was very rapid fire, very quick, but it was very easy and very accommodating. There was no strain. It didn't seem unusual, but I was a little bit woozy as a result of all this. So he told me that he just wanted to meet me. I asked him where he was from, because he had a little bit of a different accent. And so I thought of a couple places. No, I'm not from there. I'm not from your world. I'm from another place, another world out there among the stars. And he just sort of grinned. And I said, well, that's really interesting. How did you get here? He says, well, my ship, it's just back over there, just a little ways. I landed where there was a clearing. I had seen the clearing when I was coming to where I was stopped at this point. He says, I landed over there. I walked over here to see you. Well, how did you know I was going to be here? He says, because we know who you are, and we've watched you.
So they're tracking you.
Yeah. So anyway, it wasn't that long of a conversation. So I wanted to go back with him to see his ship. And he says, no, I can't let you do that. Not this time. We'll do that another time. If it's all right with you that we can visit again in the future. And I said, well, yeah, that would be great. So he left. I sat there feeling really woozy. And within, I don't know, another 20 minutes, maybe, I heard like an odd sound. I really can't tell you what it sounded like. It was just an odd sound that you would hear in the forest. And I started feeling less and less woozy. So I decided, my friend Randy's never going to show up. I'll just go back home. And then I knew how to get back home very easily. And I did. So I told my mother about it. She didn't like the idea. And you have to understand, where I was in the forest is nowhere near any city, any farm, nothing. It's just way out in the middle of nowhere. So she didn't like that. And I told her a little bit about what he told me, and she got really upset. She says, "Don't you ever talk to that man again." He showed up. He told me what to listen for when he would show up and when he was going to be nearby. And it was like Morse code. It was a high-speed beeping sound. And I would hear it in the middle of the night. It would wake me up. I would get up, I'd go out. It was easy to go outside. No one paid any attention. We didn't have indoor plumbing, so the bathroom was outside. So going outside was never any issue. I went outside, I took off, I went down and went to where I just instinctively knew to go. And that's where I would meet up with him. I did this for about 5 years, as I recall. During that time, he taught me a great number of things, and I met others like him. And I learned a great deal from them. After I turned 18, they told me that it was time for me to now go into the world and be like everyone else, that they would be watching. And if I needed them, I just needed to call out to them with my mind and they would hear me. And by this time, I understood what that meant because I'd been doing that quite successfully for many years.
But anyway, it's possibly one of the most important start point from your now incarnation, what I can say, and where the connection between healing and channeling. I didn't catch idea when you start healing.
Well, healing and channeling are two separate things, at least in my view. People who are channeling are closing their eyes and they're allowing another entity to talk through them. But with healing, it's connecting to an energy that surrounds, well, that's just prevalent in the cosmos, and channeling that energy through you so that you're not using your own energy, but you're focusing the energy. It's kind of like taking water and putting it through a funnel. You're focusing it down to one point. And that's in my view how healing is. For me, I was always able to see things that no one else could see, and I didn't know that this was the case from a very early age. And it was before I saw the UFO at 12 and a half years old. But I had, those occasions where there were extraterrestrials who visited me when I was quite young. So I don't know if there's a connection there or not.
Yeah,
But
I just want to clarify the question. We have an idea that people who had a contact possibly awarded such like this kind of abilities for healing or something else. I mean extra abilities. So possibly it connected or not. What is your point of view?
oh, I see what you're asking. I understand. Yeah, I think so. Because when you have contact with these people, it opens up something inside of you. It changes you. And I know there are people who have had contact with extraterrestrials and they've had very interesting lives thereafter because they seem to have gained specific abilities that they could use to help others. And I've run into this many times. In my case, it was always there. Uh, when uh, when I think back, how far back can I think? I can remember being 1 or 2 years old. And I remember very clearly seeing energy around people like the aura. I remember touching things and knowing who they belonged to, what the story was. I remember when I got older, it was pretty frightening, but I remember seeing people who had passed, who were dead, having conversations with them. And as far as healing goes, when I was on the farm and the animals would be hurt, I would go and try to help them. And it worked. So from a very early age, I was doing the healing where I could see inside of them. It's like remote viewing, except you're seeing inside of a body. And when you see inside of the body, then you see what's wrong. And then you start doing something to change it. You put energy here or there. You make this work. You stop that from doing what it's doing. And I've been doing this now my entire life.
Are you doing it like close connection, or like in a distance mode? You are able to do it too.
At a distance is fine. There is no distance.
I mean, like we right now have a distance, kind of 1,000 kilometers, so it's not a problem.
No, not really.
So the next question is, you told that you are able to see the aura in people, and possibly that you are able to see the aura in aliens. And what is the difference?
The difference is it's a bit stronger. It's different. It depends on the aliens. Because some of them, well, everything has a different field of energy around it. It doesn't matter if it's a dog or a cat, a fish, an alien, or a person. They all have a different field of energy around them, and they all look different. How are they different? Well, I guess, for the people that I've met from other worlds, it is very similar to the people on Earth. There seems to be in some of these people, there seems to be a lot more energy around them than there would be on a regular person walking down the street here on Earth. But that really isn't that big of a difference, because when I've been, all over the world, and, it doesn't matter where you go, you run into people with a lot of energy, and some of them don't have a lot. And it's just a difference in people. But it isn't like there's a difference in what it looks like to look at someone from another world and then look at someone from here. They're all very similar.
Can you tell us a kind of example between like normal aura of like middle people? I don't know how to compare. And one of your experience with meeting with aliens, probably you a kind of episode which you told earlier.
I think there would be really not that big a difference from one to the other. Not really. I mean, like I said, the difference is difference from one person to the next. Everything has a different field. It has a different energy. And depending upon their health, their state of mind, that's where the energy is going to be. This is what it's going to describe to me. How healthy are they? How at peace are they? When a person's nervous, their energy shrinks down around them. When they're at peace, it comes out quite large. If they're sick, the colors and the way the energy looks, it might have bands, different color of bands, or just no color, just blank, like clear. If they're very healthy, then it's all uniform. But the energy for everything revolves around it like this. Very slowly, but it revolves around. If it's not revolving, then there's no energy. The slower it goes, the weaker and weaker and weaker the view that I have of that field is going to present itself to me as. It will just look less and less energy there. It just fades away.
The most popular question from our viewers is how to start to be a contact. So the people would like to be a channeler. So some a lot, some just quite a lot, and it's popular question. And my answer is, for what are you going to be a contactee? So what is your advice and what is your point of view for this popular question?
Well, if you want to have contact, be someone that they would want to have contact with. If it's just for the thrill, it probably won't happen. If you have a reason, then it probably will. I've had many contacts with different races. Some of them are not very friendly, and others are not very caring one way or the other. But there are those that do care, that they are friendly. And what they're looking for, so far as I can tell, they are looking to make a connection with people so that these people will gain something from the experience, but they will also give something back to others as a result of the experience. A lot of people have contact, but they're afraid to talk about it. And maybe there's good reason for that. But if you have contact, if you want contact, first of all, be the kind of person that they would want to have contact with. If you have contact, then ask the important questions. What can I do to make things better? What information do you have for me that is important? Is it going to help you as a person, which is probably going to be the case? Is it eventually going to help others, which is also probably going to be the case? And that would be my advice. But if you're having contact just because it's a thrill, or just because it's a novelty and it's the new thing and you want to do it, and after a while, oh, I'm bored with that, now I'm going to go do something else. Well, I mean, if that's the case, then they probably won't contact you. The other thing is, if you want to have contact, this isn't always true, but I've noticed it in quite a few of my own experiences. Get away from the city, because the energy of all these people that are not harmonious, in other words, there's a lot of discord, they don't like that. You know, they'll fly over cities, but they're insulated inside of their ships, and they'll walk among people in cities. I've seen this many times, but they won't stay there for very long. If you want to have a meaningful conversation with them, you're going to need to go someplace away from other people, and then let them know you're there. And if you're someone that they want to talk to, then they'll let you know that they are there.